What does it mean to be a man? What does masculinity mean to you? In today's time, we've seen a concerning rise of young and old men question what masculinity means to them and how they should approach their masculinity. And in turn, we've seen plenty of figures
What color's your brigade?
step in to attempt to answer these confusing questions. And whether you believe they're right or wrong is up to you. I'm not one to judge. But for me, I don't see that as being masculine. I don't think boasting your wealth, fame, status, power, and Bugattis
What color's your brigade?
is what a man is. Masculinity to me isn't about displaying great strength. Masculinity to me is being great strength itself. Great strength and leadership isn't being on top of everyone, but below everyone. Is it truly strength to have others beneath you carry you, or to be beneath everyone carrying them? To me, a great figure with the exact masculinity I'm thinking of is no other than Uncle Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. In this video, we're gonna break down Uncle Iroh's character to see what makes him the pinnacle of masculinity. But additionally, I want to touch on another character that displays what most people would say is toxic masculinity, which is none other than Iroh's younger brother, Ozai. We all know Uncle Iroh as a tea-loving, wisdom-spitting, fire-bending master that helps Zuko and Team Avatar throughout the story. But just like everyone, Uncle Iroh isn't a perfect person. He's had a darker history and made mistakes in his life, but it's through these mistakes he was able to understand and transform himself to the better person that he is today. One of the greatest mistakes in Iroh's life was the siege of Ba Sing Se, and in an unfortunate twist of fate, Iroh's son Lu Ten dies on the battlefield. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Who is this great General Iroh, the dragon of the west that was destined to be the next Fire Lord? The son of ATLA and Fire Lord Azulon, and older brother of Ozai, Iroh was born into wealth, status, and power. But more importantly, he was born into high expectations, not just from his family, but from the entire Fire Nation. Fun fact, since Fire Lord Azulon was running the 100-Year War, his mother had to fill the role to find him a wife, and since tea was her favorite drink, she needed his wife to also have a tea obsession. And overhearing that Isla's father made her drink tea her whole childhood, she found the perfect wife. I wonder who got passed down all these tea-loving traits. Iroh has admitted that his childhood had been a difficult experience. I mean, growing up around one of the most evil characters in the show can do that to you. Iroh and Ozai were highly competitive with each other and would fight over trivial matters, and Iroh distanced himself from Ozai as he believed that his younger brother had a deeper evil within him. But even still, in some aspects, he admired Ozai's relentless effort. And right here, I can see how Iroh relates himself to Zuko, as they both had to deal with competitive, frankly, narcissistic siblings that would betray them in a heartbeat just to get ahead. But I'll touch more into that in a later segment. In search of enlightenment, Iroh would then undergo a journey of understanding the world and the other benders that shared this world with him. In this, he learned about the other cultures, such as how the waterbenders understood the flow of energy, and this allowed him to create the lightning redirection technique. He also traveled to the Sun Warriors and learned firebending from the truest firebending masters, two dragons named Ron and Shaw, and from this he learned about the secret of firebending. See, throughout time, firebending has been skewed for military purposes and as a way to display power and strength, but ultimately, hatred. And when learning from the dragons, Iroh understood that fire was not to be drawn from hatred and anger. Fire itself is life and passion. And because Iroh is such a G, he lied about slaying the dragons in order for Ron and Shaw and the Sun Warriors to remain in peace. At the time, even if it was for a small moment, Iroh was able to slowly break away from his father's ways of hateful, war-filled thinking. And this journey of understanding the world and the people in it allowed Iroh to gain a new perspective on life. And through these experiences would later build onto Iroh's character and influence his choices of understanding and kindness. Eventually, Iroh had his son, Lu Ten, who he cared and loved for with all his being. But again, pressures from his family bloodline and being the prince of an entire Fire Nation, Iroh had to join the military and continue the 100-Year War. This was a different Iroh though, an Iroh that cared about status of being heir of the Fire Nation, an Iroh that cared about being a great commander, and an Iroh that wanted power first and foremost. Iroh even admitted that it was his father, Fire Lord Azulon, and his father before him, Fire Lord Sozin, that influenced his views to crave the sense of power and status. It was almost as if destiny was forced upon him and he had to fill its role. So a character that was good but had great pressures from his family and nation to make him crave a fake destiny of honor. It just sounds just so familiar. I can't. During this time, whenever Iroh would come home from the war, he would cherish every moment he had with his son and start forming a relationship with Zuko. And eventually, Lu Ten would follow in his father's footsteps too and join the military. In fact, he even served under Iroh's command, showing the deep relationship they had together. And together, Iroh and Lu Ten would enact on Iroh's childhood vision, which is to conquer the great city of Ba Sing Se. And after 600 long and drawn out days, Iroh would make an accomplishment no other fire soldier has done. Iroh took down the outer walls of Ba Sing Se. Right here in this moment, to me, Iroh is on top of the world. He's traversed the world, touted as a great commander, nicknamed Dragon of the West. I mean, seriously, is that like not one of the hardest nicknames you've heard? He's on track to become the next Fire Lord, and now he's made one of the greatest achievements in Fire Nation history. So with all of this, what could possibly go wrong? Right before Iroh could take down the inner walls of Ba Sing Se and will undoubtedly be the greatest conqueror in Fire Nation history, his only son, Lu Ten, dies on the battlefield. With his only son gone, Iroh lost his will to fight. He lost his will to continue and abandoned the mission to take Ba Sing Se. And just like that, the great commander is known as a failure, a quitter, and someone who dishonored the entire Fire Nation. While Iroh was out, Ozai made a shady dealing behind Iroh's back and assassinated their father and assumed the position of Fire Lord. And since Iroh had no will left in him, he just let it happen. Even still, Iroh felt like this was another failure in his life. Going from top of the world to losing his only son, father, respect of the nation, honor, and himself, Iroh had to look deep within himself and ask a question. What was it all for? What did wealth, power, and status mean to him when he couldn't even be himself? What did Fire Lord mean to him when he couldn't even spend time with his son? In Tales of Ba Sing Se, Iroh wished that he could have helped Lu Ten more.
If only I could have helped you.
From here, Iroh came to a realization that all these materialistic things in his life were placed from external expectations, and when he looked deeper into himself and asked what he wants, he found that life isn't meant to be forced, but to be appreciated. Appreciating being alive, appreciating the relationship he has with others, understanding that the love we have with others is far more precious than any gold, power, or status. And with his newfound wisdom, Iroh would then go on to become the manliest man we know him as today. Throughout the last segment, I was alluding to a certain key characteristic in Iroh's character, which is, yep, he was the one that got passed down the tea-loving traits. I wonder who got passed down all these tea-loving traits. But no, in all seriousness, a characteristic that Iroh had that Ozai didn't was being a great father to those who needed it. To me, being a great father is one of the highest forms of masculinity, because you're not just leading someone, you're guiding them to understanding the world around them. Instead of having them experience the same mistakes you did, you can teach them, allowing them to have a better life than you ever could. And to me, there's just something so powerful in doing all of that. I'd say the three biggest characters that Iroh fathered was with Toph, Aang, and obviously Zuko. Something to note about these characters that all three of them didn't have a strong father figure in their lives. Toph's father was overbearing and controlling. Aang wasn't even able to have a father, being the Avatar and an air nomad. His closest person to a father was Gyatso, and even then that was taken away from him too. And Zuko's father is Ozai. I mean, do I even have to explain that part? In the episode The Chase, after an internal fight with Team Avatar, Toph gets fed up with the team and leaves, and out of pure luck, she bumps into Iroh. And the small interactions she has with him would change how she thinks for the rest of her life. See, although Toph is one of, if not the greatest earthbender of all time, she was born blind. And with overbearing parents, she has grown to be as independent as she can, not taking help from others, as she sees that help from others is them pitying her for being weak and incapable. And Iroh perfectly challenges these core beliefs. He tells Toph that there's nothing wrong with letting those who love her help her. To me, asking for help is not a sign of being weak, it's a sign of self-awareness. Understanding when you need help and allowing others around you to do so takes a sign of courage and strength that not many others would be willing to do so. After learning about the wisdom Iroh gave to Toph, Aang also asked for his advice. See, before that meeting, Aang trained with Guru Patik, and on the final test to fully unlock the Avatar state, Aang had to give up all his earthly desires, including those who he loves. And in the end, Aang couldn't give up those he loved, and it started to trouble him if he made the right choice. But when confronting Iroh with these dilemmas, Iroh understood instantly that the choice Aang made was the better one. He tells Aang that perfection and power are overrated, and that he was wise to choose happiness and love. Right here, I believe Iroh saw a glimpse of himself in Aang, as he too was in a position of great power, and when he chose power over love, the one he loves was no longer an option. Even still, with Iroh telling Aang he made the right choice, Aang is still worried that what if he's not enough without the Avatar state to stop Azula, or even Ozai for that matter? What can he do then? Iroh's response shows the wisdom and maturity he has. He starts with the truth when he says, I don't know the answer. To me, saying I don't know shows a level of self-awareness and humility to be able to admit when you simply just don't know. Even after saying he doesn't have an answer, somehow Iroh still drops the most bomb quotes. After Afterwards, he tells Aang that life is like a dark tunnel. Maybe you can't see the light at the end, but if you just keep moving, you will come to a better place. The last and most important person Iroh has been a father to was no other than Zuko. The life of Zuko was not easy, as his father was abusive on every dimension. To me, Ozai is everything Iroh is not. Ozai is the lowest form of masculinity. He is egotistical, lacks morals, and is deeply insecure. When simply speaking against an idea, not to Ozai but to another general, Zuko had to be challenged in Agni Kai. But just because he spoke back in Ozai's room, it was Ozai that felt disrespected. You know, how childish and insecure of a man do you have to be to challenge your 13-year-old son in a fight for speaking his truth, a truth that even Iroh agreed with? And when your son refuses to fight you, you permanently scar him. To me, that is cowardly in almost every single way. I mean, imagine explaining that to someone. Yeah, so my son spoke out against someone else, but it was in my room, so I felt disrespected, so I fought him, but he didn't want to fight back, so I threw boiling water at his face. See, do you hear the absurdity of that? How could you call yourself a man after doing all of that? And it gets worse from there too. We see how Ozai's selfish desire for power and status affects Zuko, but another character that it affects is Azula. Azula had the positive end of Ozai's judgment, and even still, she is still just as deeply insecure about what others think. She craves as much power as Ozai, and she has extreme perfectionism. A really important episode that shows this is The Beach. The Beach humanizes Azula. See, at this point of the show, Azula is seen as perfect, cunning, a firebending prodigy that can achieve almost any goal she puts her mind to. But in The Beach, when she tries to socialize with the other fighter citizens, she simply just can't. She doesn't understand how to. She wasn't raised to be able to do that. And as much as she doesn't want people to think it doesn't affect her, she's human just like us. And this isolation definitely gets to her too. As much as we want to blame Azula for being a terrible person throughout the show, how much can we blame her? She was raised in a household that was ordered and taught her that this is how she should be, and that's all she is. Now let's talk about how Iroh taught Zuko. Throughout the show, Zuko has felt that his destiny was to find the Avatar, and that will help him achieve everything he wants, which is his honor, status, and ultimately the love of his father. I believe Iroh saw himself the most within Zuko because he understands what it's like to be put under such pressure, to have his destiny forced upon him. That's why Iroh will always be there for him. He wants Zuko to know that he's not alone and that he doesn't have to put himself through this. Iroh is being the person he wished he had when he was growing up. When Iroh was talking to Toph, he told Toph that Zuko was lost and doesn't want him around. But like a good father, he gives him that space, and if he needs him, he will always be there to support and love him. That's why the most powerful scene for me, for Zuko's character, is when he faces his father and tells him everything that's been on his mind, and that he will beg Iroh for his forgiveness, and that Iroh was the true father his whole life. And that's exactly what he did. When he faced Iroh, he admitted all his faults, and instead of being furious at him, Iroh embraces Zuko with the unconditional love he needed his whole life. All of Zuko's life, his father has raised him to believe that if he excelled in a certain way, then he would love him, and if he failed, there's no reason to call him father anymore. But Iroh has provided this unconditional love that allowed Zuko to overcome his inner hatred of himself and pushes him to overcome every hurdle in his way, allowing him to achieve his destiny. And ultimately, it's these factors that led Zuko to being the Fire Lord. The last idea I want to touch on this segment is the final fight between Zuko and Azula. And the way I see it, it's a battle of ideals. The ideals of Iroh and the ideals of Ozai. See, Azula comes to the battle alone. She's dismantled all her Dai Li soldiers out of fear that they can't be trusted. Her fire is blue from her drive of perfectionism and the well of hatred she has. And lastly, Azula is able to shoot lightning. And Iroh has stated that lightning is a cold fire, void of emotion, and it is pure destruction.
It is not fueled by rage or emotion the way other firebending is. Some call lightning the cold-blooded fire.
On the other hand, Zuko has learned to accept help from others and has Katara with him. His source of fire is no longer hatred, but from the original source of the dragons, life. And lastly, from learning about the flow of energy from the other benders, Zuko has the ability to redirect lightning. In the fight, Zuko was able to counter pretty much everything Azula has, and when Azula felt like she was slipping, her nature of doing anything to win kicked in and she attempts to attack Katara, only for Zuko to stop it. And ultimately, from the help of Katara, Azula was beaten. All these principal teachings from Iroh has led Zuko, someone who was lucky to be born, to beat Azula, the prodigy that was born lucky. From this fight, we can see the faults in Ozai's teachings, and it was these ideals that led to his downfall too, not only in his goals but in his manhood. That's why I believe Ozai's punishment was so befitting, as now his status as Fire Lord was stripped and his power of firebending gone. What was he now? If all that he built was his manhood and now it was stripped away, what kind of a man is he now? On the other hand, in Iroh's life, he has built his character and who he is as a man, and allowed himself to use this to build on all his relationships and ultimately the happiness he has in his life. If you took Iroh's bending away, he would still be the man who he is today. Heraclitus said character is destiny, meaning your destiny isn't predetermined from external factors, but from factors within. I would say this is how Iroh approaches a lot of his life, like understanding that it's his character that makes him a man and not anything else. And he teaches these same principles to Zuko as well. From what I took from Iroh's life is 3 things: self-awareness of who you are, understanding that your life and destiny is yours alone, and learning forgiveness, not just towards others, but to yourself as well. You know, it's really quite easy to fall into routine and lose sight of who you are and what you want out of life. So every once in a while, really take a step back from things and ask yourself the big questions.
Who are you? And what do you want?
Why do you want these things? Is it for yourself or is it from external expectations? If you answered external expectations, I have a question for you. How could they know? How could anyone possibly understand who you are better than yourself? Out of every human being from the start of mankind to the present, and for every human to come, there will only be one of you. Ever. Really let that sink in. Why not let yourself be whoever it is you want to be? Because once you're gone, the world will never see this beautifully unique character ever again. Cherish your life and cherish the destiny you want for yourself. This is beyond masculinity or being a man. This is a principle that needs to be applied to every human being. Lastly, is forgiveness. From Gandhi. The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is an attribute of the strong. Everyone that you have met or will meet, and this includes yourself, this is the first time they have been alive. So why be so hard on yourself and others around you? I will make mistakes. You will make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. You can't predict the mistakes you'll make in life, because if you could, you wouldn't have made it in the first place. Now, I'm not saying let yourself to be a doormat and always be holier than thou, but be kinder to yourself and others around you, because, you know, newsflash, nobody's perfect. We're all learning and trying to be better people. And honestly, that's all we have and that's all we can do. If you're still ruminating on a past mistake you made, I want you to realize that you're the only thing that's holding that mistake to the present. Learn from that mistake and then move on. There is no other option. Iroh's life is a difficult journey of self-mastery and of understanding oneself, growing and changing to be a better person, not just for others, but for yourself as well, exuding the greatest strength, which is the love and support you provide towards everyone around you. And to me, that's pretty damn manly. And thank you everyone for watching another video. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to, like and subscribe. You guys did amazing last video. That's so awesome to me. And if you want me to cover any character, show, anime, or movie you want, make sure to comment down below. And with that, have an amazing day. Peace.